Hi everybody, Zubair Jr. is with us this morning, going to be talking about ZNotes, which is something he started a little while ago when he was a teenager. So Zubair, everyone always wants to know in these entrepreneurial journeys, how did you actually get started? How did it all come together in the first place?
Sure. So ZNotes started as a solution to a problem I was facing age 16 when I was going into my international GCSE exams. I was studying for these things and I had these textbooks which were like 300 or 400 pages long. And of course, it didn't make a lot of sense for me to just use those for my revision. And I started creating some sort of notes for myself based on a couple of principles. Number one, that they'd be concise and have exactly what's required for the examination itself.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, that they'd be for students by students. So of course I was writing them, and of course textbooks have the angle of an academic teaching you.
Yeah.
So I was writing it in a way that made sense to peers around me.
Student-friendly language
Of
and
course.
that approach, yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so it made a lot of sense to go with that approach. And so the final principle is basically it had to be distributed for free because it just doesn't make sense to put a limitation on education. We're faced with the UN SDGs, and by 2030 we want to get high quality education everywhere. And of course, education is a right; it's not a privilege. And so, with these kind of principles, I'd started these resources and I put them together and uploaded them onto a website, which I called ZNotes. And since then, it's a journey.
And so, what would be interesting is what made you make that decision. A lot of people will make notes for themselves, but what you decided to do is put them onto a website. Why did you decide to do that in the first place?
Yes, well, it really was the fact that I couldn't find something high quality written by students which had kind of the great benefits that come with a textbook, the consistency, the formatting, all the great content, and made sure that it was exactly what I needed for the syllabus, and still
So you
be completely
discovered
free.
that by doing the research and finding out that there wasn't really anything that solved that problem.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's why it started. And surprisingly, well, it was never really promoted, and it was just after my GCSEs, I went into A levels, and I did the same thing with a group of friends, and it was never promoted. This website was just there, and out of the blue, I started realizing that more and more people were using it, and it was just gaining lots and lots of traction.
And why do you think it gained traction? Because, if I Google sort of help with A levels or help with GCSEs or IGCSEs, there's going to be quite a lot of information there. Certainly now. Why did your notes get the traction that kind of others maybe didn't?
I think the main things they boil back down to those principles where I talked about the conciseness and also the fact that it spoke the student language. And the fact that they were so accessible, they weren't behind a paywall, they weren't behind a registration system, and we just wanted to get the content out there. And not only that, I think the bigger than what I just did was the fact that this idea, this concept resonated with a lot of people. And so
So you invited them to participate, this kind of by students for
not
students
really,
thing.
actually. It was even more impressive than that. It was the fact that students came to me and emailed me saying that, hey, I've used your resources for these exams, but of course I'd done 3 or 4 A levels, a couple of IGCSEs, and I couldn't cover all the subjects. So they were saying that, hey, can I help with economics or biology or something like that? And so suddenly I was being flooded with people who wanted to help develop the same kind of style of resources based on the same principles, but for many, many more subjects. And now we've had over 30 contributors from everywhere on this planet who have just been helping, and they've developed the same types of resources for their examinations. And so the platform has just continued to grow with that.
So the key thing I think for me, and then bring people up to speed with this, I was in the same situation you were, but as a principal of a college, I was looking for resources that were really good. And the thing that I liked in particular, which you haven't mentioned yet, is that the notes look beautiful. They look really, really high quality. And I think that was a big thing for me because when I was doing my own research and saying, I wasn't happy with the textbooks and I wasn't happy with the online resources that I could find. There just wasn't good quality stuff. And then when I found your stuff, I thought, oh, this looks really good. So because it looks really good, I know someone's put a lot of time and effort into this. This isn't just like a hand scrawled stuff, which might be very good, but you couldn't be sure about it. So I think that you making that decision to make things look good was important from my perspective. Was that an intentional decision to make things look really the business or what?
Probably it's part of like my personality to try to like get stuff visually and aesthetically pleasing as well. A lot of people might think that's not a big focus, but as you said, it kind of passes that barrier where that subconscious barrier where people are thinking, is this really useful or not? And suddenly, if someone has definitely put the time in to create
Yeah.
covers and back covers and made sure everything was placed in such a way that it fit and maximized spaces available, they definitely had thought
Yeah.
about it.
It was comprehensive because it was matched perfectly to the syllabus, but it was also concise. It looked really good. And the two things in the journey, which you're going to talk about a little bit now, going from just yourself and a whole bunch of users and then maybe 30 people contributing. When I first encountered it, it had something like 4 million hits on the website. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. And then like only a few months later, I looked again, it was already up to like 5 million. And I thought, oh, this is interesting because it's been going for a little while and it was just getting to that exponential sort of like significant traction part of the graph. So when did you start realizing that you were going to have to do more than just have a few notes up on your own website?
I think that decision really was made by the people when they started sending more and more resources. And of course, you mentioned 5 million, and today we're surpassing 18 million hits. It's phenomenal. We've reached over 2 million learners, unique learners out there. And we've had people coming from every single nation on this planet. There are about 3,000 or 4,000 people coming on our website every single day. And even when you're using like Google to search for us, it's our, not just us, but searching for these subjects leads to ZNotes results coming up even before the actual exam board websites. So it's been a phenomenal journey. It's also been a huge acceptance in the kind of the society and the community of the students out there who not only found these resources useful, but really believe in them because what they've done is they've contributed towards it. And another great part of the platform is not just the fact that 30 odd students across the world have created great resources, but they've also, even below that, so the kind of the comment system is a really good example of it, where tens of thousands of comments and people who are asking questions, and then students are then answering these questions as well. So suddenly it's not just me realizing that I should put these resources up and I think that's a good thing for me, but just the people realizing that someone had done this effort and put notes up, that they should also contribute towards that. And suddenly when a question pops up, they're like, I can answer that, so why not? And so we have a place where people realize collaborative advantage. They realize that there is a huge advantage for me as well, for you to get to your maximum potential. And it's just crazy to see that this manifest in the youth. We're talking about 16 to 18-year-olds, and they're all doing this.
And the key thing was unplanned, wasn't it? You didn't intend this. This sort of self-organized, people started coming to you and offering to contribute, and you didn't say it would be really good if we could answer each other's questions or anything. People just like dived in and started doing it.
Exactly. I think
brilliant.
The self-organizing aspect
Yeah.
of it is just phenomenal. It's something that I do not take credit for it at all, and this is where my kind of belief in students really leading that educational revolution comes from. It's we have the ability to take agency in our lives. We are the agents of change now, and it's visible. And with this platform, where we've really seen thousands of people take the decision to create an impact in other people's lives, and living in the world we are, this global supply chain. We're all interconnected. It makes no sense for us not to try to get everyone to the top level in education, in career, in anything in life, really.
So, and that's different because it has definitely changed. There was a time where, the knowledge was sacred and only the monks and the kings would have the knowledge. And then, most ordinary members of the public couldn't even go to school. And the whole idea of the public school movement in the UK, which started, 700-800 years ago, was to make schooling public. Now, the irony is that public schools are some of the most expensive schools to attend in the UK. But the idea is that there is a trend towards democratizing information education. And so you've tapped into this desire to contribute that young people naturally have, which makes total sense. So where do you see it going? What's next for ZNotes? What's next for this group of this community, and what are your plans?
Well, I'd never realized how far this project would reach, and so I finished my A levels and I applied to uni. I'm currently studying mathematics at UCL, and I'm in my third year, and so this project has just kept on expanding as I've been studying, and it's been taking more and more of my time and efforts, and it's just been phenomenal in that journey as well. And now I'm basically seeing ZNotes as just the kind of what it has right now just to be the foundations of a real learning ecosystem. I see the ability for open source learning to actually happen now. And I think, as you mentioned, the public schools movement, that obviously did happen, and it was a huge change, and it's really impacted many lives. But the age of technology, the age of the internet, we have the connection, we have the ability to talk to so many people, to connect with people, to be able to share resources like never before. Anyone has a 4G internet connection, and anyone can get to the best professors, the best academics, the best research institutes. They can just simply Google a question and they'll have some sort of answer. Vague, maybe it's not perfect, but they have the ability to ask stuff and learn from things. I can learn how to build an airplane on YouTube. I can learn how to cook. I can learn how to do anything. And this wealth of resources is just out there. Learning is truly possible now. Online courses offered. But I think the issue is that we're still living in this kind of system of education where we need to do certain examinations and qualifications to get to that to get to the top universities or even careers, jobs. So what ZNotes I think wants to do really is to have that framework available for students to understand what they need for the qualification. So, for example, I'm really interested in aerospace, so I will go and dive deep into learning all about the aerodynamics and fluid dynamics. I'll learn about how planes work. I'll learn about all of that. But I still need to go and pass those A levels, even though I want to study aerospace engineering at university. So what does that mean? I need the A levels. I need to know a bit of bio. I need to know a bit of chem. So you have the ability to take your learning as far as possible, but you need to remember to get to the kind of the foundations and make sure your examinations are passed as well. And that's what ZNotes wants to do. I think it wants to provide a framework for you to understand what you require for the examinations, to get through those exams and continue to learn whatever you want to learn. So for example, if I realize that I need to understand something about diffusion in chemistry, I can watch a YouTube video explaining that, but then I can check ZNotes and it will say that I need the following definitions, a couple of examples. This is the way I need to solve a question. And that prepares me for my exam.
So it's like a safety net, it's the canon, it's the whole thing. You can trust it. It's the single source that you can trust as this canon, this body of works that's going to definitely, if you know this, you'll be okay in these exams, which will help you get to the university, irrespective of what you want to study.
Definitely. Yeah. That's exactly the way we're vectoring towards.
So what would you say to people who would level the argument that actually, well, it doesn't really matter what people learn. The whole purpose of the education system is to just discriminate in such a way so that universities know which are the best students. So if you make the information more readily accessible and sort of raise the general, level of everybody, it just means that it's harder and harder to get into the universities because there's still that competition to get in these top places. So actually, you're kind of causing problems for universities because more and more people are going to learn stuff and there's still only going to be a certain number of places. So
of course, it's well, first of all, my argument comes up and it will be that I don't even believe the fact that university degrees are really translating into careers right now.
Yeah.
For example, I'm studying math. I'm not planning to go and become a mathematician or an academic, but I know exactly why I studied it. I wanted to kind of get this wealth of abstractification, problem solving, be able to look at the world and see the equations and model behind it. And that doesn't mean I want to go and start writing research papers into mathematics, but it's given me the ability to see the world in a different light. And similarly, a lot of students are doing this where they're going to university and selecting a degree, an area of study which leads them towards something that it definitely does not have to relate to the degree itself. Their career can be anywhere. And one of the biggest things we're seeing in the kind of the industry right now is the fact that these huge corporations, like it was just recently announced by Google that they don't really want graduates anymore. They can take students straight from schools or students with specific qualifications, maybe programming skills or certifications. And I think bigger corporations, and especially the ones in the kind of technological space, who realize that it really doesn't matter whether you have your A stars in chemistry and physics or not. If you're going to be studying something like business, how does that matter? So they're realizing that, and the startup space is just phenomenal, right? we're taking people from any kind of background of teaching, any kind of background in even schooling. And because we realize that, everything we need to know in those jobs, we're going to learn on the job itself. We're going to learn, we're not going to be given a syllabus or a handbook about what to do. We're going to learn as we go. So this rise of entrepreneurship, this rise of startups means that it really doesn't need a degree to do anything. It might even be that we might see that universities will become places of really research and academics.
So people might go there because they're still interested, but the whole idea of universities as being the gatekeeper to careers is no longer. So actually, what you're saying is that the knowledge itself is more important, really, than the fact that you might get into university as a result of it.
Exactly. It kind of contradicts my earlier statement about saying that, we need to get to the universities first because of these qualifications. I think there will always be some sort of institution in this world that we would need to get kind of qualified to attend or qualified to kind of be associated with. That's the way systems work. We need to be assessed in some way. Examinations aren't always the easiest ones, and they're probably not the best ones, but they're kind of the ones that work right now. The main thing I want to say and want to communicate across to people is the fact that it's going to happen within us. It's going to happen in the 1.8 billion young people out there. It's going to happen. The disruption in the educational system or in any kind of industry we're seeing, it's going to happen with the people who are actually using those systems. And it doesn't necessarily have to be those institution exam boards. It doesn't have to be the ministries. It doesn't have to be. It's going to happen within the people themselves. And we're watching it happen. We've seen startups go crazy. We're watching millionaires and billionaires come out in these industries, and it's gonna. The main thing is that if we continue to provide learning as much as possible, we continue to provide the ways for students and people really to learn stuff. It's just going to venture in the correct direction.
To do, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Okay, so what do you see as the future then for this kind of learning community, and what's going to be a natural extension of what you've created with the whole ZNotes thing?
So we believe that kind of the framework of teaching and learning would be completely open source. It would be able to be accessed by any kind of institution.
Anyone with an internet connection.
Anyone with an internet connection.
Completely free.
Yeah. And from there, I believe, as I was mentioning about these kind of the rise of the startups, I think skills which our entrepreneurs are using, and not necessarily, they're not limited to entrepreneurs, the design thinking, the lateral thinking problems, these skills, the ability to learn things faster, the ability to be more efficient at learning, the ability to be more productive, these things are sometimes not really very importantly pointed out at school or ever.
They're not really taught at school, are they? The ability to actually really learn and learn new things fast?
I don't think so. And I think part of our journey started as at the Cambridge Leadership College was also this, where we believe that how can we get students to learn things quicker and faster and be more efficient with their time and kind of get these entrepreneurial skills, because right now what's missing for students who are getting to top universities or even students who are getting to careers is the fact that with this ever-changing world, we're not given a handbook for the job we're going into. And we really need to have these skills to, if we're given a problem, we need to find a solution to it. If we need to learn something new, we need to be able to do that. So I think if we can get people to get the qualifications, and then how they do that is up to them. It's completely bespoke. It's completely customized, personalized to these students themselves. They can choose.
So the whole thing will become what they want it to become. We're not going to sort of architect it. It will sort of self-organize, architect itself, if you like.
Exactly. We want them to architect their learning. And what we want to do is provide all the tools there. So with the resources, the notes providing the kind of framework for what you need for a qualification, the next piece for us is all about talking about these kind of entrepreneurial skills, but also learning skills, which I know I say entrepreneurship and some might not completely agree with it, or some might not relate to it as much. They might not think they're the business people, and I'm only using entrepreneurship because they're the ones who are actually are pioneering these skills. Or they're
the
formalizing
best example of those at the moment.
Exactly. And it doesn't necessarily have to be you running a business, but it's about those skills that are required in learning and really adapting and being part of this ever-changing world.
And you mentioned the Leadership College. Obviously, that's how we ended up working together. So talk a little bit about what you experienced in developing kind of the academic systems, because that's where we both started working on these ideas about it's not just the content. ZNotes is all about the content initially, and now we started saying, oh, it's about the way to learn and sort of these entrepreneurial thinking type approaches. So in your role as like academic director there, what did you detect, and what did you learn, and what did you bring, and what how did that sort of shape some of your thinking?
Yeah, the great thing about the Leadership College was that we had some great students there, and we were really giving them the opportunity to test these completely groundbreaking and cutting edge pieces of
Mm-hmm.
pieces or ideas really, toolkits in their own learnings, and we saw phenomenal results at the end of it. We saw students going to top universities in the UK, and what we really developed were those learning techniques, and also getting them into business or kind of design thinking activities,
Mm-hmm.
which really gave them the confidence and gave them the ability to then kind of be the master of their own education, be the architects of their learning. And I think that's where we really, our ideas resonated a lot. And exactly this next step for ZNotes would be just to build on those. We've kind of done this kind of sandbox experiment, and we've tried it and tested it, and it really does work. And we want to communicate these ideas with more and more people. And so for ZNotes, providing those frameworks, and then being able to provide those toolkits that can really, you can choose how your learning is going to take place and where it goes towards, and package that together. That's the open source learning model for us.
And so that's the dream. And then obviously there will be, you then got the content, so you've got the ability to pick whatever content you want that will be organized in a way through the network, as a result of all these different contributors. But you've also thought that it'd be a good idea to provide them with the opportunity to develop the skills. And that will obviously happen online, and there'll be modules on these specific skills and through workbooks and things. But will there be a component that for some people they'll be able to experience these things, in more interactively, for example?
Exactly. So that's where we're heading towards. We want to start launching these sort of workshops in person, in country, on demand, because the impact you can have with real people. Because in the end, we're all humans. We want to interact with each other. We want to hear each other in real life. We want to, be tangible things, and everything I've spoken about, it has been online, and that's the impact that's had is crazy as well. But if I can speak to a couple of students, the impression it leaves is much greater than whatever I can write for pages and pages worth of. And so the way we want to develop these skills is have those toolkits available, have the ability to then go out to schools where schools can offer it, or it doesn't even have to be school. It can be collections of students who want this, collections of professionals, and be able to kind of communicate these skills that we've experimented with, we've developed. I'm using in my own studies, because trying to manage my time between lectures and trying to run these team of
Exactly.
volunteers for ZNotes, it has been,
It's bonkers.
it has been, but it's also been amazing. So I'm really testing it. I'm testing it on myself.
Yeah, you're eating your own dog food, so to speak. Yeah.
So to speak.
Okay, so in terms of bringing these experiences and allowing people to experience these things, we think that's really exciting. So how can people get involved? People that are listening to this, wherever they are in the world, what sort of things they can do? I mean, the ZNotes community will continue to grow. They can put their hands up if they haven't already to get involved in helping develop new resources for that. What can they do if they're in a school or a university right now? How can they get involved? Can they do anything?
I think we want to increase the number of offerings we have in terms of subject exam boards.
Yeah.
It's a lateral and a vertical growth. It means we want to grow up and down. We want to offer university material, but also what's stopping us from offering younger material. And there's also the complete array of exam boards out there that can all be expanded towards. So for students who are listening to this and who want to get involved, I think just reach out, tell us what you can help out with. It doesn't even need to be a full set of notes to put up. Start of this journey would be to get in touch with the community,
Yeah.
to get involved, whether it's with the exam boards that we're offering or not. It doesn't matter, because you can be the start for, or the kind of the fire for the next exam board, the next qualification, the next kind of, even it doesn't have to be high school, it could be university. And to really start embodying these kind of techniques and tools that we want to reach out to people with, and start trying these out in your own lives, in your own educational journeys. That's the step to take. It doesn't have to stop with students. And one of the greatest things we found with ZNotes was not only that students were using these, but the teachers were actually teaching with these. And
I went to Lagos and went to a school in Lagos. I was running an international workshop there, speaking at a conference, and went into the school library, and there was a whacking brace, a whole bunch of ZNotes all printed out. It was not actually allowed at the time, but the point is, schools are using these resources because they're a very concise, sophisticated, but comprehensive, accessible summary of the learning that's required, aren't they?
exactly, and that's why I think teachers have found them very attractive to use in their own programs in schools. And so institutions, educational institutions out there who think that the ideas you're speaking about can really be implemented in their schools or can be brought to their students should just get in touch and try to get the kind of the for students by students approach as far and wide as possible.
And the thing is, we don't know where it'll go. You don't even know where it'll go, because kind of people who come into it will help shape it and create something that none of us could even possibly anticipate.
Yeah, we call it complex adaptive.
Yeah.
Continuously updating.
Yeah, that's exciting. So if you were helping someone explain what it was to somebody else, we use a sort of complex adaptive system, continue, and we get that, and they sort of get that, but they can't, they want to be able to say it's a bit like this. So how would you sort of say what is a bit like?
Sure. I would say it's a learning ecosystem.
Yeah.
An ecosystem, because it's a manifestation in nature. We see it. We see how lots of kind of animals and humans and plants and all interact with each other, and that's exactly what
all collaboratively sort of working together in a way, self-stabilizing, and what survives.
Self-organizing.
What survives is an ecosystem, isn't it? Really, it's not individual species that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
So a full stack learning ecosystem. Yeah.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Okay, Z, that's incredible. Thanks very much for that.